Hello everybody. Today I'm going to be taking an in-depth look at the Stark Arms Glock 42 gas blowback pistol. The Stark Arms Glock 42 was released about 2 weeks ago in this very interesting packaging that you can see here, and has unfortunately already caught the attention of Glock, who aren't happy that Stark Arms are making these unlicensed replicas. In fact, Glock won't license any replicas, so any Glock replica they're unhappy with, but this one in particular they've been targeting since its release. I bought it from WGC shop in Hong Kong, and just as I placed the order, about 20 minutes later, it had gone from the website. Luckily they dispatched mine, and the product did actually reappear on the website. It's back on there now, but they've got a notice on there saying no customers in Europe and the USA, so obviously Glock are taking this quite seriously and saying that anywhere that their patents cover, they can't actually sell these. That's one of the reasons that Stark Arms has, instead of using their own branding, have decided to sell this under the name of Hogwarts weapon technology, which is a very cringy take on Hogwarts. Of course, they couldn't use Hogwarts either, because then they'd be sued by just about everyone. So, it does come in this very strange magic notebook packaging. Surprisingly well made, actually. I thought it would just be a bit of folded paper, but it's actually quite good quality, so I suppose it's a nice change from the usual cardboard box that you get. It doesn't say what's actually in it, just says magic notebook. So inside, and it's got a little magnet sort of seal there. Inside we have our very tiny little handgun. Nice foam cutout, got space for a larger magazine because you can also buy an extended 14-round magazine. And underneath we have our little dry fire adapter, which lots of manufacturers seem to be including nowadays, copying TM, of course. And we get our little pamphlet saying how to use it, disassemble it. The very useful exploded diagrams on the back, which I always appreciate for when I inevitably decide to take the gun apart for no reason. And there we go, Magic Notebook Volume 1 by Hogwarts. Yeah, don't know what they were thinking with that. 42 gas type gas pistol. Interesting, it says Volume 1. Perhaps they're going to be making some other small handguns, which would be really cool, because I am a big fan of these little compact concealed carry kind of guns. So one thing that you will immediately notice when you get this is that it is ridiculously small. I've got small hands, so you don't really get a great sense of scale here, but this is a very, very small gun. If I grab another handgun made by the same company that made this, I'm not actually going to mention exactly who makes this. It's kind of a chain of companies covering up other companies. I've mentioned Stark Arms, but Stark Arms are made by the same people who make this. So if you know who makes this, you'll know who I'm talking about. They make various electric guns as well, like the Scars, a few M4s and things. I'm going to need to review this at some point. A very cool pistol. I know that a lot of people won't be interested because it's associated with Cybergun, but it really is an excellent pistol. Now let's do a little size comparison. It really is laughable. Have a look at that. It's at least half the width. You know, 2/3 of the length, and so much shorter. Ridiculous. This is quite a large pistol, but this is really as small as you can get with a functioning airsoft gun. If I grab something a little bit smaller than that FNX, I've got our USP compact here, and again, makes it look like a little toy. We've got a Beretta 1934, which is a very small pistol made by Western Arms. I'm going to review that at some point. Very cool little handgun. It's amazing that this was actually a standard issue sidearm in World War II. You can see these are actually more similarly sized. Can't say that. There we go. So not such a massive difference here, although this is much heavier and thicker. That's something that really strikes you with the Glock, is just how thin it is. It's actually thinner than my thumb. About the same width as my middle finger. Crazy, ridiculously small. Of course, not quite as small as something like a Colt 25 automatic. This is a model gun, so not actually an airsoft gun. Very cool little model gun. And you can see that that is a proper little mouse gun. This is a pocket gun, or concealed carry gun. But still, very, very small, very, very thin. Actually quite comfortable though. Obviously, being a Glock, it's all quite nicely... ergonomics quite good. Good grip angle. And it's got that nice little... I guess it's kind of a beaver tail. Beaver tail's more that. I'm trying to think of what that's called. That little overhang there sits in your hand very nicely. And makes it quite usable actually. Unlike something like this little Colt 25 where you can literally only get one finger on the grip. This Glock is actually a viable kind of backup gun for airsoft use. The gun weighs 390 grams. With 130 grams being the magazine. It is actually finished quite nicely to look like a polymer magazine, which is what the real one is made out of. As you can see, it's got kind of a powdery finish that does indeed look like plastic. I've actually got the fill valve on the back there, which is very interesting. Might as well stick to the magazine now I've started talking about it. The real one is a 6-round magazine. This one is a 12-round magazine, I believe. Might as well give that a test right now. Alright, got my BBs here. Let's give it a quick go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's what the real one we're told. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Have I miscounted here? Right, I thought I'd embarrass myself there and miscounted, but actually I've managed to squeeze 13 in there. And then 1 on the top. I'm not sure if this is going to fit into the pistol with that extra 1 squished onto the top there. Let's give it a go. Wow, looks like it. It's going in there, right? So we've got 14 in the magazine. We can fit 1 in the chamber. I think that's gone in there. And that would give this incredibly small pistol a 15-round magazine capacity. Looks like it works. That is very impressive for the size of this gun. Now, being able to hold 15 rounds is not excellent if you're not able to shoot them. So I'm going to give it a quick shooting test. I understand that some people are only interested in reviews so they can see a bit of shooting. So I'm going to do a little bit of that. I haven't got much gas left, so it probably isn't the most objective test. But I can show you how the fill valve on the back here works. Really doesn't take very much gas at all, being such a tiny magazine. If I compare it to that of the FNX, which has a large magazine, have a look at that. Really not a massive gas capacity, but only getting this gun a few days ago, I haven't done a huge amount of testing myself. So this will be a little interesting test to see if we can actually get all 15 of those rounds out of this gun. Unfortunately, it's pretty horrible outside today, so I'm going to have to do this in the living room. So I've got our target set up here, only a few meters away. Really interested just to see how many of these shots we can actually get off, rather than accuracy. Excellent. Right, added a little bit of tape to hold that up. Here we go, I've already fired 1. Very impressive kick for such a small gun. Right, we're experiencing a little bit of misfeeding here. Let's have a look inside the magazine, see... Okay, it's fired all the shots. It looks like it simply hasn't locked back on the last shot there. I'll see if I can get it to lock back now. And there we go, with the last shot. Right, so right towards the end there are a couple of misfeeds, which is something that I've actually have read about online. That some people are indeed experiencing misfeeds. But I think that's not actually a bad test. The magazine's quite cold. Refill it now just so I don't forget. But actually, considering that the kick stayed consistent right through to the end of the magazine, we did have 1 or 2 misfeeds towards the end where it didn't feed properly. But I think if you loaded these to the 12 that they specify for this gun, I think that is quite impressive actually, just considering how tiny this magazine is. No cooldown either. It's very hard to shoot accurately while trying to film something, but as you can see here, at about 2 or 3 meters away, obviously, you get a grouping smaller than the gun, which is good. Hop up is actually surprisingly consistent too, so I think in conclusion of that little bit of shooting, combined with the FPS which WGC have confirmed is about 230 to 240 FPS, this is actually quite a usable gun. Something that's quite good about WGC is, I think I've removed the sticker now, but on every gun there's usually a sticker with it that says what it would shoot at with .2 and green gas. So I would say on this Garda power-up gas, yeah, you'd be looking about 240, maybe 250 FPS. And it definitely seems like it handles it quite well. You'd think that a tiny gun like this might not be able to take the pressure of a very powerful gas like that, but it does it with good kick. Do a few more little test shots here for you. Holding the slide release down, very flat, very low profile, quite hard to hold. Okay, getting a little bit of cooldown now. Nice metallic noise from it. And there we go, lock back. Overall, I'm very impressed actually with the way this shoots, especially compared to equally small guns like this Western Arms. The Western Arms can hold about 22 rounds, but it really is quite pathetic in terms of shooting. I can only really... I'm going to do a proper review on this to discuss it a little bit, but I rarely get more than 10 shots out before this runs out of gas, so really not very impressive in terms of performance. This I actually couldn't be more happy with. Right, so again, I know that people are interested in performance and things, so before I get to all the boring stuff like the quality and things, which is what interests me, I'll quickly show you how to adjust the hop up. If you didn't notice how I did that there, it's literally the same as any other Glock. If I reassemble it, you simply cock it, pull down the 2 tabs and push off the front. Couldn't be easier. And there you go, standard TM style hop up. It's actually got one of these funny shaped little buckings that you get in some of these or newer guns. Probably won't be able to see that. There you go, it's sort of a split bucking, which I guess is meant to be better. But yeah, it all seems to work quite well. Very short little barrel there. Put it back in. It's actually spring loaded to stop any jams. And we've got a really interesting design recoil rod here, which is the same as the real one. Look at that. Very interesting. So put that back in and pistol goes back together. Okay, so time for a slightly closer look at the pistol. Quality is very impressive actually. It's quite hard to appreciate quality on such a small gun. Obviously all the materials are quite thin. You can actually squeeze the grip here because there is such a lack of material. But regardless, quality is very good and there is virtually no wobble. It's probably the most quiet pistol you can, when you give it a shake like that. Really good quality. Plastics are very good. Something that's been a little disappointing I've found recently with my USP Compact Tokyo Marui is that some of the plastics are starting to shine up a little bit. The areas that come into contact the most, the slide looks alright, but the frame especially, starting to get these very shiny looking areas which just looks very toy-like. This seems to be the kind of plastic that just won't do that. Got a little bit of dirt on it. Definitely seems to be a higher quality plastic, I would say. Or at least one that's a little more wear resistant, so very good plastic. There are seams down it, just like you'll get on the real gun of course. Quite a prominent one around the back here, back strap area. I actually took a penknife and removed that because it was sort of digging into my hand a little bit, so that could be something you might need to do. But other than that, very nicely moulded. It is quite lightweight with the magazine in, definitely feels a lot more solid. I'll go over some of the parts now that are metal and which ones are plastic. So obviously plastic frame, plastic trigger as with any Glock, plastic magazine release which is a little flimsy possibly. A few times I've pushed it too far and it's actually gone into the mag well and sort of fallen out, so be careful with that, don't press it too hard. Something that might encourage you to press it too hard is the fact that the magazine doesn't drop free. does sometimes, but not really. So don't go pushing this as hard as you can. It's better just to push it a little bit and then pull the magazine out. Right, so I've got a pin here which is steel. We've got a metal slide catch which is steel. Slide is indeed metal, not steel. It's just the usual sort of zinc alloy that you find most manufacturers use in airsoft. Very good noise from it though. Sights are plastic as expected from a Glock. Back plate here is metal. Slide rails, chassis is of course metal. Lots of steel parts including the hammer, takedown pins. Front sight might actually be metal. I just realised there's a screw going through it holding it on, so that could be metal. Very hard to tell with something that small. Outer barrel is metal and the guide rod is all plastic. I think that is as per the real steel. So let's have a look at some of the trademarks and details on it. I've got nice texturing, nothing too aggressive. Do get good purchase on it though, which is important with a gun this tiny. I've got quite small hands, so I can hold it reasonably comfortably, especially with the magazine in. I can actually just about get all my fingers on because again I do have small hands. So, somebody with larger hands would only be able to get 2 fingers on. So you might have to purchase one of the extended magazines which extends about that much and offers you a few extra BBs in the magazine. That's something that Stark Arms sell, about $25 I believe, so not expensive at all, magazines. Very nice trademarks, all authentic for people that are interested in that. Made in USA, Glock Inc., Georgia. These trademarks are actually covered up by a made in Taiwan sticker, but that peeled off easily enough. We got this little mark here. I'm not actually familiar with what that mark is. Same one on the frame, perhaps where it's assembled or something. Not entirely sure. And we've got some more markings nicely engraved on the chamber there, which match up with your little serial tag here, which is moulded into a little bit of shiny metal in the frame there. Got our Glock logo there, Glock 42. This is obviously why Glock aren't too happy about this gun. Very nice finish actually on the slide. You find some cheaper metal pistols especially that have quite a grainy powder coat, quite rough. This is really nice flat matte finish and seems quite hard wearing. The only bit of wear I've encountered so far is at the slide stop position, which is unfortunately wearing away a little bit. So if you're going to buy one of these, try not to release it too much using the slide stop. You can of course release it with an overhand rack like so, because the magazine catch is correctly sprung. All magazine catches, at least for most conventional handguns, should be sprung so they always want to move downwards. So when you release pressure, it drops out the way like that. Only finish problems, overall very nicely finished. Only slight problem is perhaps on the back of the slide here, the rear corner. As you can see, there's a bit of sort of pitting or where the finish hasn't adhered to it quite properly. I only actually noticed that under inspection, under the camera here. That's not something I noticed in my shooting or, you know, my initial overlook of the little quick look of the pistol. So it's not a big deal, especially since it is so tiny. It's very easy to scrutinize when you're looking at a camera like this, but you've got to remember this is a minuscule pistol, and there are similar little sort of defects over the FNX, which are going to be more obvious because it is a larger pistol. Like in the chamber there are a few kind of dodgy bits of casting. Anyway, back to this gun. Trigger, as I said, is plastic. As you can see, it stays in the rearward position when you're when the gun is not cocked. So after you pull the trigger, it stays back, which is very good. When you cock it, it flies forward. We've got our Glock trigger safety, which is a little bit awkward on this gun. When you're shooting a normal handgun, the correct practice, and this is quite easy to do because the grip fills your hand, is to pull the trigger with the tip of your finger. That is how you get sort of that's the proper way of pulling a trigger, rather than hooking your finger around like this. So that's fine when you've got a large grip to work with. However, when you've got such a tiny gun as the Glock 42, you find that your hand sort of consumes the pistol like that, and it is much harder to pull the trigger with the tip of your finger. As you can see, your hand has to kind of bend back outwards and very delicately pull the trigger. There you go. A little bit of gas spray because I was holding it down. So that's a little bit of a problem for this trigger safety, because you find yourself naturally pulling the trigger with the middle part of your finger, and as you can see, it's not actuating the safety. So it's going to take a little bit of practice to use this properly. If it's a problem, you could obviously push out a pin and remove that, but beyond that, they're obviously just copying the Glock design, and it's a very good trigger actually in terms of feel. Stops here, good. Break point, very little over travel, and quite short reset, not too loud. So good little trigger. And as I mentioned earlier, the hammer and the few components inside are indeed steel, so should be relatively durable. So the sights are standard Glock type, obviously miniaturized, although the markings on them are luckily scaled up a little bit, so you still get a good sight picture. Standard Glock sight picture, as you can see here. Not my favourite. What it kind of forces you to do is, because if you look at the rear sight here, there's a bit of black rear sight between the white and the notch in the sight. So you end up kind of angling the gun upwards a little bit to have the dot in right in the middle there. You want to be aiming more like that, but then the dot disappears inside the sight. So I don't find them particularly intuitive sights, but at least they are quick. And with a gun this small, if you're aiming a little bit higher like this, which is what it kind of forces you to do, at least you're going to be at the kind of range where it doesn't matter so much. So overall, nice little sights. It would be really cool if somebody offered some maybe night sights, some little tritium sights for this, but I'm not sure if anyone will bother, considering how many people would actually buy this gun. Obviously has limited appeal to skirmishers. Okay, I'm going to have a closer look with you at what's actually inside the gun. So again, rack it, pull the tabs down, straight off, no problem. Some of the plastic really is remarkably thin. As you can see here, the dust cover portion of the frame actually tapers down to virtually nothing. And it is flexible, although not as flexible as you might expect from this kind of thickness of plastic. When it's all assembled, it is not a problem. It's only something you're going to really notice when the gun is apart like this. Inside seems well constructed, very, very thin parts. If you have a look at the slide rails here, they are incredibly sort of dainty looking. It's amazing that the real gun is actually this size. It's amazing that, you know, a reliable gun could function being this small. There's a bit of cat hair in there, get rid of that. As you can see, like most Stark Arm stuff, it's lubed up with all this sort of gunk, so you could clean that out. We've got a silver plated trigger bar, a steel hammer. It essentially works just like any other gas blowback Glock, but miniaturized. You can see how the magazine goes in here. Very standard, just very small. And the frame is incredibly light. All the weight comes from the magazine and the slide. Right, if we have a look at the slide next, we've got more sort of, I don't want to say chrome, but more stainless looking parts, silver plated. We've got this interesting little thing here, which cocks the hammer and then sort of slips back over it. It's just part of the mechanism. Obviously they had to make a few compromises being so tiny, one of which I'll get to later, which is that the chamber isn't completely clear when you cock it. I'll show you that. Recoil rod is very interesting, and it is designed just like the real one. It's a captive recoil rod made out of plastic with sort of 3 different parts that are moving at once. It's quite complex, but it does work well and provides good spring tension, so you get a good snappy kick. Barrel is of course metal, very nicely trademarked, very well cast piece, and it is sprung just like on the FNX because they're made by the same people, and this is to stop jamming. This was an idea that TM came up with actually on their Detonics pistol. Quite a while ago they started doing this, and it stops any jamming. If you've owned a WE 1911 or something, you'll know that the chamber likes to get jammed on the top of the slide. Incorporating a spring stops that from happening. And there we have our hop up. All seems very good quality. We've got our blowback unit here of our piston. Again, it's all very similar to a conventional gas blowback pistol. It's simply miniaturized, and the front sight is screwed on here rather than sort of molded into the slide or whatever, so that could be a part you could replace. Stark Arms guns usually take real steel parts just fine, so that's quite interesting actually, that you'd probably be able to swap these if you live in the States or somewhere. You could quite possibly swap these parts for those that belong on the real gun. So I'm not sure how many companies are making night sights and things, but I'd expect them to fit on here. And that should go for the rear sight, which looks like it might actually be screwed in. On the other Stark Arms Glocks it's dovetailed, so this might be slightly different, but still, all very good quality. I'll show you what I mean about the slight compromise in terms of realism when you open the slide. The piston doesn't retract fully. You can actually make it retract by pushing it, and that kind of forces it against the hammer. The issue that can happen when you do that is if you were to pull the trigger now, the hammer would release slightly and you'd jam the gun up, and it's quite a pain to resolve. So don't do that. You'll just have to accept that you don't get a totally clear chamber, and it's just due to the position of the hammer. Obviously they were very limited with space in here, and the hammer slightly intrudes into the space of the piston. You can move it out of the way, but I wouldn't. Still doesn't look too bad. And again, if you're taking photo shoots, you could move it like that. Just don't pull the trigger while you're doing that. Very nice crisp trigger actually, very happy with that. So yeah, overall quality really is excellent. And performance, as I showed you earlier, is actually very good as well for the size. I'm really finding it hard to think of anything that I'd say I dislike about this pistol. Perhaps the fact that the slide stop seems to be eating away at the slide a little bit is a bit of an issue, but you just have to refrain from releasing the slide too much manually. Overall, it is a great feeling pistol. It is excellent in terms of performance for its size, and it's such a unique little replica. For anyone that feels like adding something like this to the collection, I would totally recommend it.